Welcome, student, to today's explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be your academic advisor for what promises to be a beautifully bizarre curriculum today. We aren't just looking at your standard run-of-the-mill philosophical theories here. We are going to walk through a gallery of the solitary and the strange. We're literally going to examine the very fabric of reality, guided by entities that completely defy the normal boundaries of biology and physics. So grab your notebooks, get comfortable, and really open your minds because this syllabus is designed to challenge everything you think you know about your own existence. But before we meet our rather unconventional instructors, let's quickly define our core subject matter. What exactly is surrealist existentialism? Well, it's this incredibly unique intersection that bridges the gap between bizarre biological mutations, the genuinely strange entities we are about to study, and the heavy, fundamental questions they ask about abstract reality. This isn't just philosophy happening in a vacuum, right? It's philosophy lived through bizarre, mutated, and extreme physical states. It ultimately asks us, how does a radically different physical existence fundamentally alter someone's view of reality itself? Okay, let's dive into this course syllabus. We've got 5 fascinating modules to cover. Module 1, The Artifice of Solitude. Module 2, Blinding the Sensory Anchors. Module 3, The Fractals of Luck. Module 4, The Labyrinth of Determinism. And finally, Module 5, Embracing the Cosmic Void. Our journey will progress beautifully from the internal workings of the isolated mind all the way out to the terrifying scale of the cosmos. Starting right off with Module 1, The Artifice of Solitude, told from the monk's perspective. So, our very first subject is this fascinating, deeply melancholic figure who really invites us to question our deepest internal aches. Now, to truly understand the monk, you need to grasp the sheer weight of this number, 1,000. For exactly 1,000 years, the monk has existed in absolute, steadfast solitude. Just try to imagine that. A literal millennium. This incredibly long lifespan, achieved through sheer isolation, granted the monk some seemingly absurd physical capabilities. And this extreme longevity acts as a fascinating setup for their melancholic reflections on what isolation actually does to a living being. Because the monk existed entirely outside of normal societal rules for 1,000 years, they developed the ability to practically jump as high as fleas, survive without oxygen just like microscopic loriciferans, and even run as fast as cheetahs. It's wild. Yet, despite essentially becoming this unstoppable evolutionary marvel, the monk remains plagued by what they describe as an internal miniature black hole. Even when they are perfectly safe, entirely alone inside a concrete box, with literally zero physical necessities missing, the monk observes this ethereal need that drives creatures to venture outside. It leaves us questioning, is this deep hunger for connection an unbreakable natural law, or is it just some elaborate mental conjuration? Think about the last time you felt lonely. Actually, scratch that. Think about feeling overwhelmingly lonely when you're sitting in a perfectly safe room with everything you need. That's what we're talking about here. Moving on to Module 2, Blinding the Sensory Anchors. This centers around the human mage's experiment. All right, here we shift our focus from emotional solitude to the cold, hard physical mechanics of perception and imagination. The human mage presents a truly captivating hypothesis about how our own senses actually limit us. They compare visual perception to an all-encompassing room that heavily anchors the waking mind. It's absolute and total. Audio perception, on the other hand, is more like a bat just buzzing by your head. It's a fleeting anchor. The mage theorizes that our dominant visual senses act as incredibly heavy baggage. They are so completely enveloping that they actively prevent the quintessential use of pure fantasy. Simply put, as long as you have eyes constantly feeding you data, your mind is just way too weighed down to imagine something truly, purely novel. Now, being a creature of radical action, the mage decided to test this theory by trying to entirely destroy that visual anchor, and the extreme modular lengths they went to are honestly staggering. Step 1, disabling physical nociceptors, literally turning off the ability to feel pain. Step 2, completely plucking out both of their own eyes. Yeah, you heard that right. And Step 3, isolating their body within an existential tank to float freely in the void. The goal here was to see if, without the heavy anchor of sight holding it back, the biological brain would finally be completely free to generate pure, unadulterated imagination. Now, what's really interesting about this is the tragic, devastating result of the experiment, which completely shatters the mage's hypothesis. They report, and I quote, "It was my past, as if replaying in front of me, as if, still, I could not imagine anything novel." So, stripped of all visual input, the brain didn't soar into pure fantasy like they hoped. Instead, it just served up deterministic, anchored rehashings of the past. It suggests this terrifying artificiality to our biological brains, that our thoughts might just be the inevitable outputs of past data, completely incapable of true, unanchored originality. Kind of a bleak thought, right? Onward to Module 3, the Fractals of Luck, featuring the CATS measure. We are zooming outward now, moving from the internal confines of the mind to the invisible environmental forces that shape our lives. Our instructor for this module is a multidimensional cat, and it turns out this cat is surprisingly rigorous with the scientific method. The cat makes a very bold claim. Luck is not just some abstract idea of chance, but an objective quality that can be actively measured. The cat proposes applying a minute double-blind study to our own daily lives. The steps are beautifully straightforward. First, you perform a random action and record the result. Second, you repeat this over and over to build a statistically sensible sample size. Finally, you analyze the data to see if the outcomes severely skew beyond a standard binary 50% chance. It's taking a totally mundane statistical test and applying it to uncover a deep existential truth. And this brilliantly illustrates the cat's ultimate proposition. If you repeatedly roll the dice and get severely skewed, compounded negative outcomes in a row, what does that actually mean? Is a streak of bad luck just exponential mathematical chance? Or, as the cat suggests, does it reveal an objective fractal of terrible luck? The cat argues that in this ethereal realm, initial luck actually establishes further luck. Therefore, a massive streak of negativity might actually be a quintessential objective element of reality itself. It proves there is far more structure to chaos than meets the eye. Next up, Module 4, the Labyrinth of Determinism, governed by the mutant spider's web. Here, we leave behind the mere possibility of luck to stare directly into the bleak, inescapable labyrinth of absolute determinism. The mutant spider exists as a literal symbol of the passing of time itself, weaving a labyrinth of silk that represents absolute inevitability. The spider asserts this incredibly powerful question: when does the past ever not determine the present? By asking us to take a long-term bird's-eye perspective, the spider argues that regardless of the variables, the past always dictates exactly what happens right now. And therefore, our whole concept of organic choice, the comforting idea that we sit in some abyss between the organic and inorganic making free decisions, is a total, absolute illusion. And the spider points out a fascinating hypocrisy in how we view the human mind. On one side, we have what psychologists call the locus of control, the widespread, totally accepted belief that our internal choices actively manipulate external outcomes. On the other side, we have delusions of reference, a psychiatric condition where a person believes entirely random external events are mysteriously connected directly to them. The spider observes that both of these mindsets connect external reality to the self. They are quite literally two sides of the exact same coin. Yet society mysteriously only identifies one of them as a delusion. To firmly solidify this argument, the spider breaks down the undeniable biological variables that prove we are absolutely not in control. Take dopamine, for example. It chemically directs your gaze to what happens to be convenient, entirely tricking you into thinking you consciously chose to look. Action potentials in your brain fire and operate entirely beyond your direct conscious handling. Even parasites can directly and often secretly alter a host's biochemistry to change behavior without the host ever knowing a thing. For the spider, these hidden variables constantly fulfill the prophecy of universal, deterministic inevitability. You are not the weaver of your destiny, you are merely caught in the web. And finally, we reach the grand climax of our syllabus, Module 5. Embracing the Cosmic Void, with the Skeleton Mage's reality. Here, we expand all the way from microscopic biological determinism to the terrifying, unfathomable cosmic scale. The Skeleton Mage's magic is not some simple sleight of hand. It is the literal manipulation of dark matter. And the mage defines dark matter not just as physics, but as an existential source. It is the very source that spurred the Big Bang. It acts as the colossal force driving all galaxies away from each other. It exists as an everlasting void in outer space, but most importantly, and honestly most terrifyingly, it pervades the universe and lives directly inside of you. It is the incomprehensible void acting as the very heart of existence itself. The mage draws a truly profound parallel regarding human perception here. They state, Just like the machinations of your heart disgusts you, for it reveals the raw, squalid reality of biology, so would dark matter. Think about that. If you truly, deeply perceived the squishy physical mechanics of your own beating heart, the raw, squalid reality of biology would be unbearable to look at. Similarly, the mage argues that if a subjective mind were to truly perceive dark matter in all its immense distinction, it would render them utterly unable to accept reality itself. We essentially survive by staying willfully oblivious to the raw, fundamental truths of our own existence. And so, my fellow students, we conclude our explainer with this final, provocative question left to us by the skeleton mage. Now that you have witnessed the artifice of solitude, the absolute limits of imagination, the hidden geometry of luck, the illusion of choice, and the terrifying reality of the cosmic void, what are you going to do? Will you just pretend to ignore fundamental reality and go back to your comforting illusions? Or will you surrender to the tide of experiential necessities? Think on this as you go about your day. Thank you so much for joining me for this syllabus, and remember, keep questioning everything.